Hello again, I'm Coach Keita Rowe, and welcome back for another video. Um, this month I thought I would do something special because for those of you who don't know, I am coming upon being a 6-year breast cancer survivor, and October is actually Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So, in honor of breast cancer awareness, I thought I would do a special series that I've done before, and it was received really well, which is called The 5 S's Lessons from My Cancer Journey. And what the 5 S's are lessons that I had to learn along the way during my cancer journey. So it starts with diagnosis, through treatment, which was chemo and radiation, and through making it through that journey and kind of readjusting to life, and getting back out there and living a normal life, and getting my mind ready to deal with the effects that come after going through treatment. So today we're going to start on the very first lesson that I learned during my cancer journey, and that is survivor. And I hope that by sharing my journey with you and the things that I've learned, if you have someone close to you who has been diagnosed, or who, recently diagnosed, they may have been diagnosed a long time ago and they still deal with kind of that. There is a certain kind of PTSD that people who survive serious illnesses kind of deal with. And if you never dealt with like a real serious illness and been sick for an extended period of time and had to go through some type of treatment, you may not fully understand, because I didn't fully understand until I was diagnosed. But those people who are dealing with some trauma from going through a serious illness can benefit from this. And you, as a caretaker or a loved one of somebody who has been diagnosed, can benefit from this, because we're really going to dig into the mindset of a survivor, and what they need to make it through that journey. And so I'm going to start with survivor. And it may seem weird that that was the first lesson that I learned, but once we dig into it, you'll see that it's actually not weird. And that's because most people think of a survivor as somebody who was diagnosed however long ago, could be 1, 2, 3 years. They've been through treatment and they've been cancer free for a while. But the very first lesson that I had to learn in my cancer journey was survivor. And that before I went through any treatment, and the day that I got that call, and the doctor was like, Miss Rowe, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's cancer. That word was something that I had to get into my psyche and in my spirit. And to give you an idea of where I was at when I got diagnosed, it was about 5 years after my mother had actually passed away from lung cancer. And she had had a year-long battle. It was a terrible, terrible thing to watch someone that you love, especially your mother, go through. And she had been a heavy smoker for like most of her life, like starting when she was young until she was about in her 40s, and then she had quit for about 10 years. So we were hopeful, that she would never develop any type of lung cancer, but she also was very asthmatic. And just, it kind of like, we weren't thinking about it, it came out of the blue. She had some seizures like at my house, and then I had to take her to, like, let's get you to the doctor. She had some seizures on the way to the hospital, but it was still a shock when the doctor came in and said, she's got cancer. And the very first thing that he said was, she's not going to make it. Like, the very first thing he said to us after he said that she's got cancer. And so what that did was resolve us at that point to the fact that she was not going to make it. Like, we agreed to having chemotherapy and radiation and, taking all these steps. But in the end, it was just in our brains that, she wasn't going to survive this. So it was like really just extending her life. And so when I got to the point where I was diagnosed, I was terrified because the only experience that I had had personally was with my mother's cancer journey. And to me, cancer was pretty much like just the face of death. Like, it even hurt sometimes when I looked at her and I could see like her face sunken in. It was just hard for me to look at my mother as this new person that was just like, you could just see sickness and illness on her, and I knew that she was depressed. And so I was terrified. Like, as soon as the doctor said it's cancer, I just blacked out. And I'm sitting, I had to go home. I tell my work, I'm like, I gotta go home now. So I go home and I find myself on the couch, face buried in a pillow, just crying my eyes out. And my kids come home. They were very young at this time. They were about 13, 12, and 5. So my youngest son was actually born 2 months before my mother passed away. And they're like, what's wrong? And I didn't want to tell my younger son, so I tell the oldest two. And for a second, they're like, oh no, like, what are we going to do? And I'm just like, I don't know. And I'm crying with the blanket over my head. And my daughter was like, don't you think you're being just a bit dramatic? I take the cover off my head and I'm like, what? And she's like, you're being kind of dramatic. Like, you look okay to me. And I'm like, did you hear what I said? I told you I had cancer. And then I had to really stop and think about it in terms of her 13-year-old brain had not dealt with anybody, having cancer before. So it's just like, to her, it's like just a word. They just told you a word. You don't look like you've fallen down. Your hair hasn't fell out yet. And here you are with your head buried in the pillow. So basically you've given up before this has even gotten started good. And I had, like, I was already like calling my brother, like, take my kids and I'm going to make a will. And the very first thing that I thought was, I'm going to die. That's exactly what ran through my head. And sometimes I look back on that and I'm just like, why was that the very first thing that I thought? How different would my life be if in these situations, the very first thing that I thought would be something like, I can live. So the next day, I pulled myself together. Maybe a few days later, I pulled myself together, went to go get a biopsy, and, they tell me the treatment plan. And I'm sitting at my desk at work, and, I'm just kind of talking to God, and I'm like, why, why me and this? And I hear the word in my mind, and it's survivor. And I'm like, what? And he's like, survivor. You have to accept that you're going to be a survivor right now. And I felt I felt moved to get a piece of paper and just make a little sketch of where I wanted to end up when I wanted to die. I felt the Lord leading me to make a sketch of when I wanted to die, and I knew I didn't want it to be then. So I make a sketch, and I've got the gravestone, and it's like when I'm 80 something, and I'm like, this is what I'm going to call into existence. And from that moment on, people started to speak to me in my journey. So some of the first people to speak to me, like I feel like God was speaking through them, was like my aunt. And she's telling me, you don't sit at home alone and let the devil put things in your head and make you think that, you're going to die or be sad or depressed. And I had a very good friend who I had just met at the time. We just met at work, and she tells me, I've been through this twice, actually, and it was a wonderful experience. I'm like, what? And she's like, it was a wonderful experience. Like, it just changed my whole perspective on life and who I am. And it's just telling you that you need to take care of yourself and not give all of yourself to everybody else. And there are lessons that you're going to learn in this journey. So that is when I resolved to be a survivor. And my mental mode kind of switched from woe is me to what do I have to do to get through this? And I started to picture myself through the ordeal and into the future, and just focuses on survivorship from day one. And one of the greatest experiences I've had as a survivor was 1 year after treatment, the hospital that I go to, they had a lot of great stuff for survivors, and we'll get into that for people going through treatment, and we'll get through that in other lessons. But 1 year, they invite you to a big survivorship celebration. It's literally called a survivorship celebration, and we go to Millionaires Row at Churchill Downs, and we have this big dinner, and they treat us to music and prizes, and it's like we're just celebrating survivorship. And never had I had an experience like that before, and I think it gives you something to like really look forward to. And you just put in your mind that this is what I am, and I'm gonna make it. If you are diagnosed yesterday, if you are diagnosed 3 years ago, if you are diagnosed 15 years ago, you are a survivor. And you need to get that in your head and get that in your spirit. And if there's someone that you care about who's been diagnosed whenever, then get that in their spirit. Because you're going to be, or they are going to be fighting a battle. Could be forever. It's been 6 years for me, and I still fight that battle. Very scary time when you have your annual appointments. But I keep that word. I actually have a bracelet with that word on there that a very good friend made for me, because his mother is a survivor. She had very aggressive breast cancer when he was a kid, and he helped me through my journey so much. He would tell me how she worked out, and she would just muster up enough energy to work out and eat right, and she made it. She's still making it today. So that's lesson 1. Lesson for my cancer journeys, the 5 S's. We'll get into the next lesson next time, but definitely like and share, and I hope that this can bless somebody as a caretaker or as a survivor. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next lesson. And as always, like and share. Thank you.